We are not the military hegemon. In other words, we are not so vastly superior in our military power that we can dominate Eastern Europe and Russia. It can't be done. That was my point earlier. Russia is a continental power, a land power. We are primarily a maritime and naval power. That's very important to understand. We don't have the staying power in the Eastern Hemisphere. It would be as if the Russians were heavily engaged in Mexico, building up forces there to attack us. That would be insane because we would be the dominant force that they could not possibly resist. So in truth, what can we do? The only thing we can do is essentially what I think President Trump set out to do, which is tell Zelensky to shut up and color. And that's what he has to do. You don't let a small power that is already in the middle of a hopelessly lost war that has cost 1.7 to 1.8 million Ukrainians in uniform, done irreparable damage to generations of Ukrainians. There are many people that don't think the Ukrainian nation will survive this. Now, that's the truth. And what President Trump has said, it's time to stop. We need to get the best possible outcome that we can get. Recognize what we cannot demand. Recognize what we think we can get. There was no willingness on Zelensky's side to do that. So President Trump, I think, would like to wash his hands of the whole thing. I told him that I thought that was the best thing for him to do from the very beginning. Listen, I didn't start this. I don't support it. We're leaving. We're out. And the Europeans are full of nonsense. These people have nothing to offer. They don't have armies to send. And if they tried to, they'd all be obliterated.
Yeah, there's been reports earlier that the US is moving a lot of their military installations away from Eastern Europe, at least military support from Eastern Europe. There were unconfirmed reports which showed, and then also there was the post in Truth Social by Trump where he said, Zelensky could regain all their territory back, maybe go further. Good luck to them with the support of NATO and support of the EU. So it looked like that he was washing his hands early on. Is that an indication that if Zelensky does not accept a deal now, there is a possibility that Trump does walk away? Because we also know he wants to achieve peace. He wants that achievement like he had in the Middle East.
Well, what does he have in the Middle East?
At least a ceasefire for now. I know there's a lot of holes in it.
I don't think so. I think the Israelis are doing exactly what the hell they want to do. I don't think they give a damn about any of the alleged agreements that were made. And I didn't see Hamas or Netanyahu show up in Sharm el-Sheikh. So I think that's a facade, if it's not just an illusion. That's a personal observation, take it or leave it. I just don't see that as being very meaningful. I don't think that he should sign up for another facade. All you do is damage your credibility. Our credibility is pretty low right now. Very few people in the world believe anything we say. So I think President Trump would like to disengage, which is the polite term. And the best way to disengage is to announce to your allies that you're on your own because we're not going to participate in this war with Russia. In other words, if you want to engage Russia directly in an offensive war, remember, we're not talking about a defensive war. We're talking about an offensive war. We're not with you. And that's completely legitimate. At the same time, Ukraine has lost.
But how much will they lose? If the US is not supporting Ukraine anymore, then Putin has an incentive to go beyond the Donbass. At least now there's some sort of deterrence with American support.
Yeah, but you had that map up there. And the only thing that is not currently in Russian hands on that map really is Odessa. That whole banana belt that you highlighted on that thing is the historic Novorossiya, New Russia, and has been Russified. The people that live there are overwhelmingly Russians. Odessa has always been a Russian city, was never part of Ukraine. Everybody says, well, who cares? Back in 1950, Khrushchev gave it to his party buddies after a drunken evening on the town. So now it is. And that's not true. You can say that, but it isn't. But if you look at the green areas to the top, and then you look at the green area at the bottom, I'm talking about, there. That area should reach over to Odessa. And I imagine the Russians will take Odessa. Now, I would be more concerned about that if I were Zelensky, because that turns your remaining Ukraine into a landlocked country. If I were in his position, I would not want that to happen. But what is to stop him from getting there? Nothing. He can get there whenever he wants to go. Does he want to go to Kiev? Not really, although he does, revere Kiev as the cradle of Orthodox Christianity as a Russian, but he doesn't really want to fight for it. Does he want to go any further west? Not very much, because the further west you go, the more real Ukrainians you run into. These are not people that are Russified. These are not people of Russian culture and Russian language. He doesn't want to rule them. The problem for the Russians is they don't want Ukraine to be a platform for attack against Russia in the future. And that's been Lavrov's mantra repeatedly. Whatever happens in Ukraine, we don't want to refight this war. We don't want to go back down this road again. We want a new security architecture for Europe. And there's no willingness whatsoever on President Trump's part to discuss that. President Trump has always been very short-fused. Let's get a deal. What's the deal? Oh, let's get a ceasefire. That's a deal. What good is a ceasefire if the ceasefire doesn't produce lasting peace? If the ceasefire produces more injustice to both parties? No one wants that. The Russians don't want it. We just want, hey, let's have a deal and we can all go home happy. And I can go back and say, see, I got a deal. And that's what Trump has done in the Middle East. Forget it. That deal isn't real. That's the problem.